Hi there, it is Jennifer, and I am excited to do this broadcast with you guys today. I am also known as the Intentional Mom, and for those of you who don't know, I am actually also the homeschooling mom of 9. I have 9 kids that I have been homeschooling since my oldest was little, and she is now just finishing her freshman year in college. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me via email, and I did a series a couple of weeks ago on things that you guys can use to help manage the school at home. So I would encourage you to go back and watch those videos. I talked about a lot of real, I guess maybe more proactive actions to take. Those are really good. But what I'm still getting is people who know me and know that I'm a homeschooling mom of 9 have been reaching out to me and saying, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know how to do all of this school that I'm supposed to do with my kids at home. I don't know. I've got other kids at home. I've got little kids at home. Like, how do you do it all? Share the secrets with me about how to get my kids through school, how to manage all of this, and how to deal with the young kids at the same time. Okay? So that's what I want to talk to you guys specifically about today. I want to talk to you about how to do school at home. Okay? So I'm going to, before I forget to mention it, I've got 10 things that are going to help you with this. But I'm going to start off by sharing some things about why you guys are different. Those of you who are trying to school kids at home right now, like those of you moms who are used to your kids being in school and now they're at home and you're having to be the teacher at home, it's different than me as a homeschooling mom. So I want to start off by kind of highlighting some of those differences because I think recognizing those differences is going to help a lot with that frustration and maybe some of that why is this so hard kind of thinking that you might be having, and just might kind of help put your mind at ease. I also, after this video is done, I will link to a schedule that I put forth, and that's going to be one of my tips here in a minute. But one of the most important things you can have as a mom who is trying to do school at home is a daily schedule. Not so much so that everything can go according to plan and everything can go according to schedule, because we all know that's not going to happen. But if we think about what school is, right? School has certain activities, things happen at a certain time, every day, day in and day out. So there is something to be said for having a schedule. So I'm going to put a link to a schedule with a template and a video that I put together for you on how to best set a schedule for this time that we are all in right now. So make sure that you grab that, okay? And I'll link to it as soon as I'm done with this video, okay? So I think what we need to talk about first is just some things in general first before I get to the actual tips, okay? So a schedule is the most important thing. And again, I will link to that. That's the one thing I wanted to point out. But I think it's also important to recognize that you guys, you moms who are at home with your kids right now trying to figure out how to do school, you guys deserve some major credit for what has been thrown in your lap. And I think you guys deserve some major understanding that it's totally normal if you are feeling stressed out and overwhelmed right now. Because this is something that you've never done before. Because as a homeschooling mom, you're doing school at home, and it's different than homeschooling, if that makes sense. So let me just highlight some of these differences, okay? If you are doing school at home now because of COVID and your kids are out of school, okay, this was not your choice. These are some of the differences. As a homeschooling mom, this was my choice, right? Like I took years to make the decision to homeschool my kids, right? This was not the case for you. So it may not be your choice at all, right? You might prefer that your kids are in school, but now they're not. And so it's important to recognize that this was not your choice, and that makes you different from me. And that makes you in a more stressed out time than what I am, right? Homeschooling is not this stressful. The amount of stress that you guys are experiencing as moms who are now trying to school your kids at home, this is not what homeschooling is like. My heart breaks for you guys because of the stress you guys are under, and understandably so, okay? But the first difference between you and I, if as a homeschooling mom, I am a homeschooling mom, you are a mom who is now trying to figure out how to do school at home because your kids can't go to school, it's important to, number one, recognize that this was not your choice, and that makes us different, okay? Here's another thing that makes us different. You have had no time to prepare for doing school at home, right? Like I said, it was like a 2-year decision for us. So I had time to research what I wanted to do. I had time to think about how this would really work. You had no time to prepare for this. So it was literally thrown into your lap like a ball of fire, right? And you're having to pick it up and run with it. So that only adds to the stress you're feeling right now, is the fact that you had no time to prepare, okay? So the third thing that makes you and I different is the fact that you had no time to ease into it. And this is especially true if you have more than one kid you're trying to do school with, and or if you're not trying to school a kindergartner, right? How hard is it to do kindergarten, right? When I started homeschooling my oldest in kindergarten is totally fun, right? There's not a lot of real hard things to teach there. As opposed to if you are a mom who has now been thrust into doing school at home and you've got a 3rd grader and a 6th grader and a 9th grader, there is no easing into that, right? I mean, like, how do you teach 9th grade? How do you teach 3rd grade, right? I mean, those are hard years. It's not like easing into it, kind of dipping your toe into the water and getting used to it with a kindergartner. That makes you and I totally different, and it makes it totally understandable that you are stressed out right now because you haven't been able to ease into homeschooling or schooling at home. You have been thrown into it, right? So that's important to recognize. Also important to recognize is that me as a homeschooling mom and you as a mom who is schooling your kids at home, you, for the large part, as I understand it from what I see on social media and from my friends who are now schooling their kids at home, is that you have to play by somebody else's rules, right? The teacher is sending you things that you need to do. The teachers or the principal or the school system is sending you things you need to do with your kids every day. And that's totally different than me as a homeschooling mom who really makes my own rules on a day-to-day basis, right? You kind of have all these hoops you have to jump through every single day. This is what needs to get done, and it needs to be done by this time, and you need to participate and have your kids participate in these group chats. And I can appreciate all the teachers are doing. I'm not saying anything is bad about this. I'm just saying that if you're feeling overwhelmed as a mom, it's totally understandable. And I feel so bad for you guys because this is not my experience, and I would never want the amount of stress that you guys are under. But on a daily basis, you're playing by somebody else's rules, right? You have these deadlines, you have these things that you have to get done according to what your teachers and school districts are asking for. And that's hard, right? Because real life is happening at the same time, right? Like, schooling isn't the only thing you have to do every day. In fact, schooling is probably totally a new thing for you. And so now you're having to figure out how to make that fit into absolutely everything else that's part of your daily life. So playing by somebody else's rules makes it hard because you can't always give yourself the grace where you know you need it because you have other people's deadlines and other people's hoops to jump through. And that makes it really hard, okay? So that's another way that you and I are different. A fifth way that you and I are different, me as a homeschooling mom, you as a mom who is schooling at home now, is that you might be dealing with the fact that your kids actually miss school, right? Like, this isn't just a hard transition for you, it's probably a hard transition for them too, right? They're not used to you being their teacher. They're not used to seeing their teacher only on Zoom calls and Skype calls or Facebook or whatever it might be. Like, they're struggling too. Your kids are used to actually the structure and having to answer to somebody else, and now all of a sudden they're answering to you. And that makes it different for you, and that also makes it different for them. So the fact that your kids might just as well be missing their friends and missing all of the sports that they would be doing, like, that's hard for them, which then makes it a bigger challenge for you. So that is a challenge that needs to be differentiated between you and I. The fact that my kids have always been homeschooled and they have plenty of activities out of the house, but it never was this flip of a coin where all of a sudden everything you're used to, everything your kids are used to is now gone. And that makes it an added challenge for you and for them which then turns it around and makes it a challenge for you again, if that makes sense. So your kids are probably missing school, missing all the activities, missing all of their friends, missing all of that. And so that then, though, comes back to you because you're the one who's here, right? When our kids are struggling and we're the ones who are here, we're the ones that they're going to kind of take that out on, and that makes it hard. So acknowledge that your kids are probably missing school and that's hard for them, but that also is ricocheting back and making it hard on you. Okay, so that's what makes you and I different. Another thing that makes what we're doing different here is that isolation is hard. Most of us are in, kind of isolation. We're told to stay at home. We're told that we can only go out for essentials. And as humans, this is hard for us, right? We're not used to we're not used to having to be limited and having to have such simple things that we probably kind of took for granted before this. Now they're no longer our reality. And so isolation is just hard. It's hard to do all these things in isolation. As homeschool moms, we have the support of each other, right? We go to activities, a lot of us go to activities and take our kids to activities that are for homeschooled kids. So while our kids are doing gymnastics or dance class or whatever it might be, we have that interaction with other homeschool moms, and we can kind of draw off of each other in a social type of way, which we no longer have because isolation is part of my life too. But in the overall scheme of everything that's totally new to you guys as schooling at home moms, this isolation thing is probably harder for you than it is for me, because you are just completely left without a network. And that's hard when you're trying to take on all these new things. So just recognize that isolation is a hard place to be in, especially for you right now when you're trying to homeschool your kids or school your kids at home. Okay? Another thing that makes you and I different on a normal basis is that homeschoolers have plenty of activities. Like me, right? My kids are now stuck at home. All of their activities have been cut off, just like yours. Normally, as homeschool moms, that helps save our sanity to some extent. The fact that our kids can go to this homeschool co-op, or they can go to dance class or gymnastics class or whatever it might be. All of those things that we usually have available to us as homeschoolers, you don't have. We don't have either. But again, when you're used to your kids being at school all the time and you're used to not being teacher, the fact that your kids also have no activities only makes that harder. So homeschooling typically isn't this hard because we have kids who are able to do activities as well, which is something we don't have right now, okay? And then the last thing that I want to touch on that makes you and I different, and I hope what I'm doing during these things that I've been sharing right now, I'm going to get to the tips in a minute, but I hope that what I have done this far has helped you maybe get a little bit of understanding and understand that we as homeschool moms give you guys all the props in the world because this is hard for you in a way that this is not our reality. This is not homeschooling, right? What you guys are doing is not homeschooling. You are having to do so much more than we ever have to do. And so I hope that it gives you a little bit of peace of mind in knowing that if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I totally get it. As a homeschool mom, I totally get it. And they're hard shoes to be in where you guys are right now. So I just want to give you guys some acknowledgement, okay? And understanding that this is hard. And this is hard for a lot of reasons and challenges that I've not even had to deal with. And I recognize that, and you need to recognize that as well, okay? All right, the last thing I wanted to point out is that you have been thrown into this whole thing, this schooling kids at home during a stressful time, right? There are all kinds of other stressors in addition to what's going on right now with schooling at home, right? This may have taken a toll on your income. We can't get the groceries we need. Everybody is, you might be feeling fearful and anxious and panicked about, what's going on. Is your family going to stay healthy? You might be dealing with people, friends, or family members who are sick. There's just a lot of stress right now because of what's going on. And to have this, again, fireball thrown in your lap during this time that's already stressful because of all of these other things only makes your task all the more challenging, okay? So understand that this is already a super stressful time, and to have you guys have to do this during this time only makes your job all the more difficult, okay? So understand that. I just shared 6 reasons just shared 6 differences between you as a mom who is now doing school at home and me as a homeschooling mom. And I hope that has kind of given you permission to maybe feel some of the feelings that you're feeling right now, which probably are related to stress, frustration, overwhelm. I don't know how I'm going to get all this done with my kids. Maybe I can't get all of this done with my kids. All of that. I totally can understand why you're feeling all of those things. So I hope that I've highlighted some reasons why it's totally normal for you to be feeling that way, okay? But I am the type of person, I am very much a realist, and I'm very much a person who kind of says, I'm not just going to take it lying down. I am the type of person who, when I am thrown any kind of challenge, I'm going to figure out how I can deal with that challenge. And so now I want to shift gears to giving you 10 things that I think help me as a homeschooling mom, that may be able to help you as a homeschooling mom now, right? Help you try to get through this, okay? All right, so I have 10 things for you. All right, the first thing is to know your limits, right? You have all of these demands. You have to do all these things. Your kids have to do this class online, that class online, participate in this group discussion, complete these papers, all of these things, right? But you still have your limits as a human being. And honestly, so do they. And so I'm not telling you to break any rules, and I'm not telling you to muddy the waters, but at the same time, know your own limits. Maybe what they're asking you to do is just not possible for you for whatever reason, right? I think it's okay to know your own limits and to recognize your own limits and to kind of give yourself permission to do what you can do, and know that it might not be checking off all the boxes that you're supposed to check off every day, but you're still giving it your all. And everybody has limits. So know your limits. If you are looking at what is required of you right now and you are saying, there is no way that I can do this today, right? There is no way I can get this done this week. Then look at what you're being asked to do and figure out what you can do and focus on that first, right? If you're feeling like I cannot do all of this stuff, figure out what you can do. Figure out what takes away that feeling of anxiousness and that feeling of I could never do all of this, and it just kind of starts to push you right over the edge. Start by not looking at the whole picture. Don't look at everything, all the requirements, all the classes, all the papers, all the discussions, all the group classes, all of that. Just start by determining what can I do and start from there. Because what you'll find is if you shorten or lessen the amount that you have on your plate initially, it will allow you to take care of what's on your plate. And then you'll realize once you get those things taken care of, I really can take care of maybe some of these other things. When we look at this huge task and all of these pieces and parts as an overall whole, it can just make us feel so paralyzed that we can't even figure out how to move forward at all. So I would suggest, if you are feeling that way, to take what you're being asked to do and make it smaller and focus on that first. And it starts by knowing your limits. If you are looking at things and you're feeling totally overwhelmed and frustrated and ready to cry in the corner by 10 a.m., then start by recognizing this is more than I can handle. I need to push back my limits and figure out what I can do, okay? So maybe you've never had to think about this before. Maybe sure, your kids have been home on summer break, but have you been having to do school with them at the same time? No, this is totally different. So figure out what your limits are and then start by working within those. No matter what else is out there, no matter what else you're being told you have to do, you can only do what you have to do. So start with what you feel is within your limits and then go from there, okay? The second tip I have is to get the right perspective. And that also kind of plays into the previous thing that I just talked about, which is you are only human. You can only do what you can do. And you are going to do your best. And your kids are not going to be completely ruined because they haven't been able to finish out this year in school and you've been their teacher, right? I think that's an important perspective to have. You're going to do what you can within your limits, and your kids are going to be okay because of it. even if you feel like you're in this sense of panic about the fact that you can't get all the things done, okay? Get the right perspective in that this is a very small blip on the radar of the overall whole of your kids' schooling experience, and they're going to be okay, okay? I think that's an important perspective to have, all right? Number 3 is to have a daily schedule. And again, I mentioned that in the top of this video where I said I created a daily schedule for you guys that I think would be really helpful for you. And I'm going to link to it at the top of this video and along with this video, okay? Having a daily schedule and then making sure your kids know what that schedule is going to be helpful. They have a schedule in school, right? They have a schedule in school for a reason because it helps to have consistent, you know, this class at this time, recess at this time, lunch hour at this time. This is what we do at this time. And there's a reason why they do that in schools. They do that because kids do better with that, as do you. And so coming up with a daily schedule, what time are meals going to be? What time is schoolwork going to happen? What time are regular other tasks going to take? Are you going to have a recess, which we'll get to that in a moment? What time is recess going to happen? All of these things. Come up with a daily schedule and post it where your kids can be aware of what it is so that they know what's happening when. They know what's happening in school. They know what time lunch is. They know what time recess is. They know when to get to what class. It's the same thing. You're just going to do the same thing here, okay? All right, the 4th tip I have is to use the weekends. As much as we would like to think and regular school is Monday through Friday, the weekends are 2 other days, right? If you're feeling overwhelmed by what you have to do and you're realizing I can't get all of this done, we are never just doing school Monday through Friday. Well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes we are, but we often have sports and we have other activities that take part of our time. And so for that reason, a lot of times our schooling from during the week is spilling over into the weekend in some point, at some way. As much as it would be nice to have 2 days free of school, the reality is that might not just work that way. But knowing that and remembering that you have the weekend might free up a little bit of your anxiety and frustration that you're feeling during the week to remember, oh yes, I could still work through some of this on the weekend, right? So don't forget that the weekends are there, okay? All right, the 5th tip I have is to schedule meals and snacks. If you have kids at home, you have probably realized the same thing I have, which is that if left to their own devices, the kitchen would be a constant open situation. There would be always somebody in there eating something and making messes. And I don't know about you, but it's frustrating to me when my kitchen constantly has food and slime and grime and empty cups and all of the things all hours of the day. So again, meals, snacks, lunchtime, they happen on a schedule in school. So for you to say to your kids, breakfast is at this time and ends at this time, snack time is this time to this time, lunchtime is this time to this time, that's what they're used to. And for me, if my kitchen is a constant war zone and people are always eating, it drives me insane. So this is just kind of a tip from me to you as a mom with kids at school. Develop regular and scheduled meals and snack times. And you'll see that that's part of the schedule that I've created for you guys, okay? But scheduling meals and snacks very much does help. And that way too, you can make sure that kind of their blood sugar isn't like taking a total nosedive. If you may have discovered that if kids are hungry or their sugar is way up or way down, you know, it makes schooling hard. So if you can kind of schedule it where it's a little bit more even throughout the day, that is very helpful because that way their behavior is going to be a little bit more even keeled throughout the day. So I would suggest scheduling your meals and snacks. Make them at a beginning, make a set time for the beginning, make a set time for the end, okay? All right, number 6 is a huge thing that I looked past. Honestly, as a homeschool mom, I looked past this for a long time. And that is the need for scheduling breaks throughout your day, right? There's a reason why they have recess. There's a reason why they have breaks. And I would suggest that because you're in your home, and this is not something you're used to, that you would have even more breaks planned into the day than they have in school. You need more than one morning recess, one lunch, and maybe one afternoon. You need more breaks than that. You need that, And your kids need that in your school day now that you're schooling at home. So take regular breaks, and I would argue that take them more often even than in school. Maybe 2 breaks in the morning, 2 breaks in the afternoon, that kind of thing. But regular breaks are important, okay? All right, next I have the importance to burn off energy, and that includes you. And I would say that fresh air is best. There's a reason why they send all the kids outside during recess. I started having recess in my homeschool day years ago, and it made such a difference. And I live in Michigan, so during the winter, sending my kids outside isn't always an option. So then I have an exercise plan for them, and it would include things like jumping jacks, sitting up, running, or jumping jacks, sit-ups, running steps, rotating around the dining room table. I mean, we had to make it work, right? My kids couldn't go outside, but the importance of your kids burning off some energy, and likely you burning off some energy too, is super helpful. So figure out a way on these breaks for your kids and yourself to burn off just a little bit of energy. And it doesn't have to be major energy for you to burn off during this time. Maybe you're just going to walk down and get the mail. But fresh air and actual activity really does help. Okay? Gym class was invented for a reason. It helps. All right? Okay. Next is to pay attention to when you work best. You have, like me, you have attention span, and you have brain capacity, and you have energy levels that come and go throughout the day. So if you're trying to teach your kids more things that take more focus, things that take more energy, pay attention to when you tend to work best so that you're trying to do those things at that time. A lot of times we don't pay any attention to this. The times that your kids naturally work better with this times help too, and that is important, but it's most important that you are doing the things with your kids at the right times. So if you're trying to teach your kid algebra, or you're trying to teach your kids this new math, or something that is a huge taxing activity for your brain, make sure you're doing that shortly after a meal or something like that. If you're hungry, if your blood sugar is low, if you haven't been drinking properly, and I mean water, if your energy level is low, it's just going to be hard for you to do harder things at these times. So take into account when your kids have to do more things that are more challenging for you, and try to make sure that you're doing those things at the best times every day. Okay? All right, the 9th tip, I've got 2 more. Number 9 is to have activities and entertainment for your younger kids. If you're trying to homeschool or do school at home with some kids, but you've got toddlers too, you need to have some entertainment for them that is available. All right? So I'm going to do a blog post that goes along with this, and I will have links to some of the things that I have found to help during this time. But don't expect that while you're focused on school with some of your older kids, your younger kids are just going to not get into mischief and just kind of tolerate that. They're not used to their older kids being home either. They're not used to you doing school with their older siblings. So they're used to kind of having you more to themselves. So this is not an easy time for them either. So figure out when you are doing that real focused schooling at home with your kids, figure out how to entertain your kids so that they can be separated from you, not coming and getting at you, every 2 seconds. Can I have a snack? Can I have a drink? I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. Whatever it is, right? Try to eliminate that by keeping them entertained and having some activities and things for them to do, special things, so that they can focus on those things and be entertained apart from you, so that you can just get this school done with your older kids. Okay, so plan activities for the younger kids. Don't forget about them. I realize your plate is full with these older kids that you're having to school at home, but these younger kids aren't used to that either. And you need to figure out a way to keep them entertained so that they are not bothering you and prohibiting you from just getting through the school day. So have some activities to keep have some activities to keep the little kids busy while you're dealing with the big kids' school. And then finally, this is the last tip, and I saved this one until the end because I think it might be the most important, which is know when to call it a day, right? There are just some days that we don't do school, right? We start and I have attitude problems and I have sibling fighting and my attitude is bad. I might be tired. I didn't have time to eat breakfast. Kids are it's a hard subject and it's just not something we just don't have it in us for the day. it's okay to call it a day. And again, I can't speak to the requirements that your specific teacher or school district might have for you. But I would venture a guess that even if you have certain things you're supposed to get done on certain days, getting them done the next day or even the day after that is going to be okay. And there are just times where you can tell that it is just not going to happen. And the amount of fighting and the amount of yelling and screaming and all of that you have to do to get through the school day, there has to be a point where you can just say, you know what, this is not worth it to me. This is not worth the strain on a relationship. This is not worth the stress on me. This is not worth the stress on them. It is okay to have a time where you say, I just can't do it today. And it might be based on you and it might be based on your kids, right? But I really hope, and I've got to believe that you still have some of that freedom to say, I just can't do it. I just can't do it today because I just can't, right? And maybe you can't say, I'm grumpy, my kids are grumpy, had a bad day yesterday, didn't get enough sleep last night, right? All of those things play a role. And as a homeschool mom, I have the flexibility to say, you know what? I know I can make this day up later. And I would argue that you may have this too, okay? There's probably more flexibility. And honestly, what's the worst that can happen? I guess that's my question. What's the worst that can happen if you don't get through the assigned lessons today? Because you can't do it without screaming at your kid. No fault of your own, right? We've talked about that. I know that I have given you guys permission to say, this is hard, you guys. This is a much harder road than I've ever had to walk. And it's okay in my mind to sometimes say, I'm waving the white flag. And that's just the way it's going to be today. And then you worry about the rest tomorrow. Or maybe you get to later in the day after dinner and maybe you've gotten some little kids in bed and maybe you say, you know what, I feel like I can take on this math now. Sometimes that's the way it happens for us. There are plenty of times where we are doing school at 9 o'clock at night with some of my older kids because we just couldn't do it earlier in the day. But once we've had a change in attitude, once we've had some time to not feel pressured, once we've had some time to just work out our own craziness, it just changes things on your part and on your kids' part. And trying to do math at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if there's all kinds of reasons why it's not working, and it's going to take you 3 hours to do it, you might very well be able to get through it in 20 minutes later at night just because things have changed. And just because things are different and attitudes are different and circumstances are different and all of that, okay? So I hope that I have helped you guys. You guys, you deserve all the respect in the world. You are doing something that is way harder than I have ever had to do. I make my own rules as a homeschool mom, and you guys are not able to do that. And but we need to figure out ways that we can work within that. And you are not powerless in that. And it's okay. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, but I hope that you use these tips to kind of make some things easier. And I'll put some links here that you guys find helpful, and I'll link to the blog post that I'm going to put together on this, where you'll be able to read in more detail and actually follow some of the links to some of the things that we use. And so hopefully you'll find all of that helpful. But you guys deserve all the respect in the world. You know, as a homeschool mom, I'm thankful that I'm a homeschool mom and I'm not a school at home mom right now. But you guys will get through this, and you will, because you're strong and because we just do. That's what moms do, right? So you guys can do this, okay? So hopefully these tips have helped you. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you later.